Joe Kahn. Joe Kahn is an attorney here in Philadelphia. Joe, welcome to Philly
Yep.
Speaks. How you
Good
doing this
morning.
morning, Joe?
Welcome to the
Good
show.
morning.
Good
Wonderful
morning.
to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for responding to that email.
Yes,
real
thank
quick.
you for your team responding first. And alum.
All right. Okay, so Joe, tell us a little bit about yourself. We got about 20 minutes. Tell us a little bit about yourself and why are you running? Why do you want to do this job?
Well, Senator, as you know, and good morning, Tiffany.
Good morning.
I'm a lifelong Philadelphian, and I've literally dedicated my life. My entire career has been dedicated to seeking justice in Philadelphia. 16 years, both at the district attorney's office, handling some of the toughest fights on behalf of some of the most vulnerable, marginalized victims in Philadelphia, and then at the U.S. Attorney's Office, taking on a lot of the big fights that need to be waged to deal with major problems that we have in our community, whether it was gun violence or corruption or fraud against the elderly. And I decided I needed to step forward and run for district attorney because Philadelphia needs a progressive prosecutor who is going to change the culture at that office and lead the city forward so that we have a district attorney that is dedicated to taking on the big and tough fights that will make sure that we have access to justice for all Philadelphians, especially the people who are most marginalized and most vulnerable in our city.
Right. I mean, there's so much controversy going on nationally and locally, and especially right now with the current DA seat. If you're elected, where would you start to kind of clean that up and rebuild the relationship, especially locally with, the DA's office specifically?
Yeah, there's so much work to be done. And I think first and foremost, we need to make sure that the district attorney and all who work for the DA is going to be a champion for all people, especially those who are most vulnerable. And I think that one of the reasons we need to put this emphasis in the DA's office is because we have so many people, who don't share the same privilege that I have, which is the privilege of being able to report a crime. There are so many places in our city where relationships between law enforcement and the community that they serve have suffered, and because of that, victims of crime suffer. And so there are people of color who have had bad experiences with the police who feel that it doesn't make sense to speak up or report crime. They may fear retaliation, feel like speaking up is the wrong thing to do. There are immigrant communities who fear that if they have any contact with the police whatsoever, they're going to be deported and their families are going to be torn apart. There are members of the LGBT community, especially transgender individuals, who fear that if they speak to the police, they're not going to be treated with dignity and respect. And what I need to make sure that I'm doing as district attorney is making sure that the DA's office is not just going to be receptive to those folks, but is going to be their champion, and to make sure that they have access to justice and that we are dedicating to seeking justice for all those folks. So I think that's one place to start. And beyond being victims of crime, there are many people who are vulnerable because they're sitting in a prison cell because they shouldn't be, and that could be because they can't afford to make bail and we have a broken bail system. It could be that they were wrongfully convicted and we don't have a DA's office that's dedicated to rooting out past injustices and fixing mistakes that were made long ago. It could be that people are victims of hate crimes or civil rights violations, and they can't count on a federal U.S. Attorney's Office or Federal Department of Justice to enforce those kinds of violations the way we did in the past. For all these reasons, it's more important now than ever that we have a district attorney who not only knows how to do the job, but has both the progressive vision and the progressive values to be the kind of DA that we need moving forward.
So, Joe, tell us as we're trying to get to learn who you are. All right, that's one of the things that this 20-minute block can provide for you. Who is Joe Kahn? Who are you? Okay. I mean, and I say it with some jest, but so people can get a sense of what kind of relationship that they need to have, or who is Joe Kahn? Who is he?
Yeah, I mean, look, my story really begins with the story of my parents, who really started this family from scratch in Philadelphia. My mom grew up in West Oak Lane and lost her father at a very early age. He had struggled with addiction his whole life, and as soon as she got out of high school, graduated Cardinal Doctorate, she went right to work for a nurse. And at a very early age, in her early 20s, met this tall, dark, and handsome stranger from Pakistan.
Okay.
My father, and he had left his family to come to this country for opportunity. And so this Muslim man and this Christian woman didn't know where they were supposed to be, so they moved to a Jewish neighborhood in Northeast Philadelphia to start my family. And that's where we were raised, my brother Tarek and I. And we had the benefit of going to great public schools where we really learned the importance of public service from both our teachers who looked out for us like we were their own, and also for my father who dedicated his life to working for the city, trying to make this our Philadelphia a better place for everyone. And I had the opportunity to take that education and go on to get my law degree at the University of Chicago, where I had an amazing education, but I also met the other adult who changed my life, who is a young man named Barack Obama.
It's an Obama sighting. It's an Obama sighting. Okay.
And he was really an instrumental influence in my life at that early age, and showed me what it looked like to be a great public servant, to really have the humility of serving people by dedicating a career to looking out for the most vulnerable and the most exploited. So that's why I was able to come back with a sense of mission to Philadelphia. And people don't necessarily know my name, and that's part of my mission in this campaign, but they know the work that I've done. They know that they've heard of the Match.com rapist case, which is the case that I spent years pursuing, where I made sure that a person who had a lot of privilege and a lot of wealth wasn't able to buy justice, and I was able to hold him accountable and make sure that he went to prison, even though he kept beating justice, even though he kept preying on vulnerable women and assaulting them and getting away with it. And I was able to make sure that our broken bail system, which allowed him to keep making bail until I got involved, made sure that I was able to hold him and get him held in custody, even though he had the resources to buy bail under the old system. People know Senator, some of the hate crimes work that I did.
Sure.
When the late great E. Stephen Collins was the victim of a hate crime that very few people took seriously, and I was proud to stand up for him and his wife, and make sure that we recognize that there's a role for prosecutors to play in dealing with hatred and dealing with victims who need to know that when they suffer not just the indignity of a crime, but something that has that additional emotional trauma of being targeted because of who you are, because of what you look like, that you're going to have a champion in the DA's office. That's the kind of assistant district attorney that I was. That's the kind of assistant U.S. attorney I was. People in the legal community certainly know that I was the kind of prosecutor that didn't fight defense lawyers on things like expungements or exonerating innocent people, that I was a partner, that I was leading the effort because I understood, as many people in that office know, that the role of a prosecutor, of a district attorney, is not to seek convictions. It is not to grab this low-hanging fruit, these easy wins, but to take on the tough fights and to seek justice at all times. And
Joe, let me interrupt. Let me interrupt because I mean that's important, and I was stunned a little bit when you mentioned E's name, so folks don't understand. When Cheryl and I got married in Los Angeles, he was in my wedding party. And when he on his flight back to Philadelphia, he was harassed on the airplane by another passenger. Mm-hmm. It made national news. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I did not know about Cheryl and I just didn't know about. We trying to figure out how to get to the honeymoon, okay? Mm-hmm. And then somebody calls us up and says, "Yo, did you see the news about the guy from Philly?" And it was E. And I just found out that Joe was one of the prosecutors in this case. So, sitting here looking at a picture of E. Stephen Collins here in the E. Stephen Collins studio, there's a resonance. With that particular story, but so that's important. But the larger policy stuff, Joe. I mean, there's a move happening in Harrisburg right now, a return to mandatory minimum sentencing. Okay, which was really a fundamental part of the growth of the incarceration rates across this state and a number of states across the country. Give the Philly Speaks family your take on that.
Yeah, and I think going back to these mandatory minimums in these drug cases, especially the way that they were written before, makes absolutely no sense. And we need to be doing everything we can to bring down the incarceration rate, which is unacceptably high, not just with Philadelphia offenders, but throughout the state. And I think that it's a good way for us to start the discussion about how we rethink our approach to dealing with the drug epidemic, because for too long we've allowed prosecutors to treat addiction like a crime, and addiction should not be a crime, right? And when I talk about some of these easy wins, you look at so many of these cases that make up the statistics. In the cases that the current DA has been able to say, well, we've increased our conviction rates. Well, so many of these drug cases, Senator and Tiffany, are these low-level drug offenses that are very easy to win, but they're not doing anything to deal with our problem of addiction. And so that's the reason that I'm the only candidate in this race who has called for an end of the prosecution of low-level drug offenses. And I want to take these cases completely out of the criminal justice system so that when the police are clearing the streets, when they're confiscating these drugs and taking them off of our streets, and they're prosecuting the dealers, when we're talking about the addicts, the people who are struggling with addiction, instead of taking them and booking them and charging them, I want to take them directly to these treatment programs or these diversionary programs that otherwise right now don't happen until after you've been arrested, after you have the risk of having a criminal conviction, and after we put a lot of resources that could put in a treatment into a criminal case. I want to stop that system. I want to put an end to treating this like a criminal justice issue, and I want to start focusing on addiction like a public health issue.
Makes sense. So what is one or two current policies at the DA's office that you would currently change?
Well, number one, I want to bring a new focus on reentry, which is helping returning citizens who are coming out of prison, who have paid their debt to society and now are trying to adjust to society. I want to make sure that we bring a new focus to the role of the district attorney in helping those folks, because we've become very good at punishing folks who are coming out of prison when they make mistakes, and we have not been as bold and dynamic about trying to set them up for success. It's one of the things I was most proud of at the U.S. Attorney's Office is I participated in one of the most successful reentry programs in the country. And the way that program worked is it focused on young men who had gone to federal prison for violent crime and made a commitment to trying to help them in their reentry, not just by punishing them if they made mistakes, but by setting them up for success. One of the keys to that program was mentors. Another key to the success was jobs. And we have to be focused on how we deal with this problem, because it's not just a problem for those offenders who are reentering society and their families if they go back to prison, but it's also a public safety issue, because if they go back to crime, especially violent crime, there's going to be victims. The whole community is going to suffer if they fall, and we have a collective interest in lifting them up and setting those young men up for success, and that's what I want to do as DA.
We're talking with Joe Kahn. He is the candidate for district attorney here in the city of Philadelphia. Joe, this is the first time you've run for public office, right?
It certainly is.
Okay,
yeah.
well, here, lesson one, get your website out, get your phone number out.
Yes, and social media.
Social media, all that stuff.
Follow you along on the trail.
All right. Go ahead.
The website is joeforphilly.com, and I'm on Instagram and Twitter at joeforphilly. And folks can call anytime at 770-362-9930. That's Joe for Philly, and I'm Joe Kahn, running for district attorney.
What kind of support are you picking up around the city, Joe?
It's been amazing. I mean, when I started this campaign, and a lot of people don't remember that I was the first candidate in this race, and I was the only person who was willing to stand up to the current DA and take him on before his allies started to retreat from him. And the outpouring of support that I found was amazing. I tapped into this unbelievable network of progressive and civic-minded activists who just wanted to see a change in Philadelphia. They wanted to see generational change. They wanted to see a change in the kind of Democrat that we're electing, because this is a Democratic primary, and we have to be, I think, really cognizant of the fact that when we're choosing a leader to represent our party and represent our city and represent our DA, we're making a statement about who represents the best in this party and who can send the message forward that this party is not about corruption and cronyism, but is about equality, is about justice and fairness. And that's not only the kind of career that I've had, it's the life that I led. People know that. People know that I have a diverse background that's rich in diversity and ethnicity and in faith. People know that I've been committed to serving the least among us. And that's the kind of leader that I think people are looking for. And that's the reason we've been so successful. People people didn't give me much of a chance when I started. We ended up putting together the best fundraising operation out of any campaign. We've had the most, not just the most amount of money that we raised, the most amount of supporters. We have over 900 donors have contributed to our campaign at this point. That's not something a lot of people expected from a guy who was toiling away as a line prosecutor for 16 years. But I'm proud of the work that I've done, and it's good to see that at this point my reputation and the good name that I've earned through a lifetime in Philadelphia has been paying off, and that we're getting an amazing reception as we move forward in this campaign.
That's Joe Kahn. He's running for district attorney. I want to be your DA. All right, okay. He's running for district attorney here in the city of Philadelphia.
JoeForPhilly.com.
JoeForPhilly.com. All right. Joe, there's this novel thing called telephones. Do you have a phone number that people can call into?
Yes, 770-362-9930.
All right.